Welcome to Dr. Cush's Exotic Drinks. I'm, of course, Dr. Cush, along with my barback Kyle. I'm not a real doctor, but I did spend almost 2 decades running some of LA's best bars. After years of teaching classes and training bartenders, I want to demystify the cocktail world for you. Let's try a few new things as I open up my bar to everybody. Belly up, chat, and let's have a drink. All right, everybody, welcome to Dr. Cush's Exotic Book Club. Tonight we are going to be book clubbing about this guy right here. Oh, look at this. This camera's working again. Hello. This is Ernest Hemingway's A Moveable Feast. It is a portrait of the artist as a young man living in Paris. We'll get into the whole thing here in a minute, but I do... we are going to go over a little bit of the history of this book, and then we're going to make a great cocktail that I think I created this one. It's tough to tell. I'll be very honest. It's tough to tell whether or not I created this cocktail. It seems simple. So it makes me think that maybe somebody else has done this and I just couldn't find the ingredients. But that's what we're doing tonight, guys. I don't know how long this show will last. I don't know much about this show at all, as this is the first time we are doing it. But in the meanwhile, I do want to give you guys a link here. I'll do this right here. In case you would like to join in the book club. 1 second. Now I'm echoing. We're gonna mute that. Check, check. Okay. Uh-oh. That's not great. Okay, I'm gonna hang me up there. Oh, I bet I know what it is. Give me a second. We are going to go in here. Sorry, guys. Book club is getting close to getting canceled. Where are you? Oh, gosh. Oh, check, check. Okay. Anyway, guys, that is what we got here. Oh, gosh. It is still definitely echoing. I don't know why this has happened. Why are you doing this to me? All right, guys. We might have to do book club without inviting guests on. We're gonna leave that. Check, check. Okay. Yeah, okay. We will. Why is this? Oh. Wonder if that's from the Facebook. Check, check. Oh no. Okay. Yes, we are going to chat at the book club. I guess I can't listen to myself. Can you guys hear let me know if you guys can hear an echo. For some reason, I have just decided that an echo is going to be hitting me, and I don't know what thing that is. Check, check. Hello? Oh. No. Dang. We don't hear an echo. Okay, I'm going to take these out then, and we're just going to go from there. Okay, cool, guys. I'm going to have you guys write in your suggestions for this, so I guess we will not be having a full-on chat, but please let me know what you guys think of the book as we go. Let me say hello to the people, then we'll get right into making the drinks. Bon Bon, finish the book. Congrats, Bon Bon. That's great. I think... Listen, for a lot of, I don't know what kind of reader you are. I was an avid reader for a very long time, but have sort of fallen off. So I am excited to get back to reading books. But I know that if you haven't read for a long time, it is difficult to find the time in the day to sit down with yourself and just read little squiggles on a page and basically hallucinate. That is more or less what reading is. Amy Bear got through most of it. Most of it is good enough. There will be spoilers for you. I think that the last 2 chapters of this are probably the entire reason for reading this book. It's where we get into the F. Scott Fitzgerald stuff, and boy, oh boy, was that fascinating. I was very, very interested to learn more about the life and times of F. Scott Fitzgerald. Mostly, I want to learn more about Zelda, because she Sounds awesome. Michael is here. Good to see you, Michael. Good to see you, Stephanie, the winners of the 2020 Ford Kentucky Derby. And there is, as it turns out, some horse racing in this one. I actually have one of my favorite lines in the whole thing is about horse racing. So I have that written down. So good news, we have our horse racers in here. Roger G is here. Drink club with books. That's more or less what it is. I mean, what are we? What are we hiding something? It's drink clubs with books. Paul Bellinardo giving us a wow book club. Cheers to you. Absolutely cheers to all of us. I'm so bummed that I won't be able to listen to you guys. Bonbon's loving it. Yes. Chat book club. That's what we got. Is book club an elaborate ploy to avoid technology? Yes. Yes. You guys saw how tough technology was the other day. I did end up buying another dongle for my camera, and it was always, as it always is, the dongle. All right, let's get into this, guys. This is Ernest Hemingway's A Moveable Feast. I think there's a few things that we should know about this book before we get into it. So if you read this book without having any historical place to put this, obviously written about the 1920s, and probably some of it was written in the 1920s. There is one of Hemingway's friends remembers the time when he pulled out 2 trunks when he was moving his things from Paris, and Hemingway goes, "Oh crap, that's where that was," and he basically found the manuscript. But this book was actually published posthumously, which means that it was published after Hemingway had passed away. It was published by his 4th wife, Mary. And there is some concern. There is some concern about whether or not Mary went through and sort of edited the book at all. Mary, of course, not mentioned. Mary was not met in Paris. Mary did not live with him on the ski hills. Mary was much later than all this. So there is a little concern about whether or not this was edited by Mary after they died, or after he died. Tough to tell. No real way to tell. There is a second edition of this book, written or edited, I suppose, by Hemingway's son. That's kind of a weird one. Tough to tell whether or not that's a good thing or not a good thing. But everybody assumes that the 2009 version of this book, the Moveable Feast, is not the original. This is the 1964 version was. So I guess we then have to talk about what the narrator is in this book. The narrator is Hemingway in his 20s, living in Paris amongst a number of, writers that we now know as great writers: Ezra Pound, Gertrude Stein, Scott Fitzgerald. Oh gosh, Bonbon read the restored version. Uh-oh. Well, Bonbon, you'll have to give us your opinion on the restored version. We're going to do this version. You can give us the restored version's opinion. And it seems really interesting that Hemingway just happened to be hanging around all of these people at the time. I think that seems really interesting until you realize that he didn't write this book at the time. He wasn't going home and scribbling in his notebook all the stuff that I did today. Oh, today I went out and helped old Scotty get his car back from Lyon. That's not how this works. Basically, Hemingway sat and wrote a bunch of notes down, and then when he was living in Idaho, put this whole book together. Never got it published. Again, he died in 61, and this book came out in 64. So there is a bit of an untrustworthy narrator. And there's a lot of great books that have untrustworthy narrators. You're not supposed to believe that Billy Pilgrim from Slaughterhouse-Five is completely all there. I mean, he literally is talking with the Tralfamadorians. But we still love the book because really what we're doing is we are finding a way to relate to, even if some of the stories are a little blown out, or even if Hemingway, who was famously not we'll just say it. I love the man, I love the writing, but you can separate the man from his writing. We can be a little postmodern and separate the work from the author. He wasn't a great guy all the time. He was kind of Hemingway was famously kind of crabby, I think is a great way to put it. So we don't find that crabbiness almost ever in the book because, of course, he's writing about himself, but he does make other writers very crabby. I think it's important, before we get too deep into it, though, that we get a drink in our hands because this, of course, is a cocktail show first, and it is a book club for the first time. So we're going to be making a drink from a number of different ingredients that Hemingway mentions. Two of them come from F. Scott Fitzgerald. One of them is sort of just ubiquitous across the book. Champagne is completely, I mean, he talks about champagne all the time through the book. And then one of them is more or less just a street that he lived near. So we're going to be making a cocktail that I am calling, and until somebody else can tell me that this is already a cocktail, I have to assume it is with the ingredients we're putting in here. We're making a cocktail right now called the Moveable Feast. It is going to take the lemon press and which is French lemonade. I had to look that up. I had no idea what lemon press was. It's a more or less it's taking the lemons and pressing those oils out. We're getting some oleosaccharum out, and then we are making sugar. So that's what we got. But instead of putting sugar into this lemonade, we are going to start off over here with Saint Germain. Hopefully you guys all caught all that Saint Germain stuff that he was talking about. One of the big roads that he traveled on as he went about his journey was a road called Saint Germain. I figured it sounds French. It probably is French. I guess I should probably learn the background of the Saint Germain. But we know it is an elderflower liqueur, not an elderberry liqueur. That's, I don't know if you guys remember the history of this show, but that was the first fight I ever got into with Loriander. Loriander called me out. I was having a rough technical time, and I was calling it elderberry liqueur. It is not that. It is elderflower liqueur. But we're going to take we're going to take a half an ounce of some elderflower liqueur. Saint Germain works best, but find whatever you got. Half an ounce there. Perfect. I'm so confused. Check. Yeah, I don't know why my headphones are echoing, and they weren't until I put up that little thing. There we go. Put this here. This is the lemon press, so we are going to get some lemon juice. I have these huge things of, this is pseudo juice, so more or less, yes, it is in a vodka container, but that's where it lives right now. We're going to go ahead and put in half an ounce of some lemon juice. More or less what we have made at this point is an elderflower lemonade, or a lemon press. That is how we're starting this off. My favorite chapters in this book, by far, and I hate when this happens, but it often does. Wouldn't it be nice if the first chapter was the greatest chapter of all time? But unfortunately, that just, you really have to know the characters until you can get great revelations, famous books that I love that end great. My dad's favorite book of all time, A Prayer for Owen Meany, really is kind of a middling book until the very last chapter. And then it's like, oh my God. I don't think most people get to the great chapter in A Prayer for Owen Meany because, again, it's kind of just a book about a short kid. And then the very end is great. In this one, kind of the same thing. The plot of this whole book is man goes to cafe, drinks, writes, and has minor arguments with pretty famous people. That's the plot. If you were to just plot this whole thing out, that's what it is. Man goes to cafe, goes back home. Man goes to cafe, goes back home. Man goes to cafe, over and over and over for many chapters. It's what's in those chapters, I think, that is most important. But the last real writer that we deal with is a guy named F. Scott Fitzgerald. He calls him Scott in the book. I love to know that he just called himself Scott. His name is not F. I always thought it was a weird name to just call yourself F. But in that, we meet the two men, and as they are traveling from Lyon back to Paris, drink a lot of whiskey. And I understand that times have changed, but no clue how they drove drinking all that. They were drinking Masson, which is a type of wine, and they were drinking a lot of whiskey. So we're going to throw in about an ounce and a quarter of some whiskey here. So I'm using an American whiskey. This is a technical. Oh, this is a gift from Paul. This is rye. It is an American whiskey, but that doesn't matter. I assume the whiskey that they're speaking about in the book is more than likely. It is Scotch, usually Scotch. There we have that. A very, very basic beginning to a cocktail. I just want to put a couple dashes of bitters in this. So we're going to put a bit of Angostura bitters in here. I assume would probably be good with the French Pêcheux bitters, but I feel like the bitterness that we're looking for is going to come from the Angostura. Throw an ice cube in here. Right there. And then give this a shake. Thought about shaving my mustache for this. For those of you who did read the book. Oh gosh. For those of you who did read the book, you know there's a whole controversy in the book about making a waiter shave their mustache. I almost shaved the mustache in solidarity for the waiter, but we kept it. We could serve this one. There we go. We could serve this one in a champagne glass. I don't think that is going to be Hemingway style. We probably would just drink this one right out of the bottle. If this was Hemingway style, we're going to pour this guy out. Kind of an interesting color here. And then we're going to fill this up to the top. Hemingway talks a lot about cutting booze, wine, all that stuff. So we're going to cut this with some champagne. Technically, California champagne. I was not going to crack open a nice bottle of champagne for this. So we're instead going to be using Cook's, the world's okayest champagne. We'll throw in one more ice cube. I think ice is always nice to have in a cocktail. Oh, let's put it on our mark. There we go. There's our mark right there. Drop that. And here we go. Fill this up. And there we have it. Kind of a whiskey sour fizz. Kind of an elderflower. A champagne cocktail, kind of all over the place right here. Give this a little stir. But now we have something to drink. Ooh, that is delicious. Excellent. Okay. There are a few themes that I want to get into that relate to this book. Some things that really stood out to me, but obviously some things that stand out to me, just like in cocktails, just like in whiskey tasting, rum tasting. Just because it's something that I see doesn't mean it's something that you saw, and just because you guys see it and I didn't doesn't mean it is not right. So if you guys have themes that you'd like to bring in, I think that's what I want to talk about. So Paul says the winter of whiskey has begun. It might end just as quickly. Sorry, I was as I was reading, I was so worried we'd log in tonight and no mustache and a lame American bar instead of the tiki bar. Glad my fears were unfounded. That, Roger, is a very specific fear only put forward by this book. So well done, Roger. Extra points. I think the show will start giving out points at this point. The theme I want to get into at first is hunger. I want to read a quick passage for you guys. I marked it off, but I marked it in pen. I probably should have marked it with a thing. This is directly after Hemingway has stopped doing his horse racing. For a while, Hemingway certainly wasn't making a lot of money. He talks about how to live in Paris is basically skip a few meals, never buy new clothes, and then you can afford some luxuries. I think that's a really interesting way to look um, at a living situation. You know, you want the luxuries, so you're going to have to go hungry for a little bit. But he said if you put a lot of time into the horse races, this is back when horses could absolutely be drugged up. If you figured out how to do that, you could certainly handicap horses, and you could make, if you put your whole living towards this, you could make a living. But this is what it said: when I stopped working on the races, I was glad, but it left an emptiness. By then, I knew that everything good and bad left an emptiness when it stopped. But it was the bad, the emptiness. Sorry, but if it was the bad, the emptiness filled up by itself. If it was the good, you could only fill it by finding something better. I think that is an astute little package for Hemingway then to go on and discuss what hunger did to him. He would often not eat for days on end. Gertrude Stein would tell him how skinny he looks. We see Ernest Hemingway, and he's a big, bulky fellow, but he was skipping meals. Oftentimes he was skipping meals because he could not afford the wine, or he couldn't get his hands on the wine. And why would he eat if he can't drink? We know from the Hemingway daiquiri that's the way he wanted his Hemingway daiquiri was if he's going to have any sugar at all, he wanted that sugar to be alcohol. And take out all the other stuff, take out all the other garbage, just give me all the alcohol stuff. Made a horrible cocktail, but certainly was an efficient way to get drunk. The Moveable Feast in itself, Paris, is a feast that you can it's movable. You can have it kind of anywhere. So if you need to be satiated, you can always sort of remember Paris. You can remember your youth. You can remember what you were doing when you were a child, what you were doing when you were when you were your least sell out self. There is an element of selling out that goes on in this, as well as hunger. And we meet a number of different characters that sort of exemplify the hunger that he's talking about. I want to start with Ezra Pound. Is this even interesting? I have no idea if this is even interesting. Poverty, the emptiness, drinking to evade the emptiness, gambling to avoid the emptiness. Yeah, it's all in that stuff. And even when he did great things, the line, if it was good, you could only fill it by finding something better. He was never able to be satisfied. He was a young man. He was a young man that was just unable to be satisfied. He was always going to be hungry. He was always, always, always hungry. And anyway, I want to talk about Ezra Pound, and I want to talk about his opium. I feel like the metaphor there is kind of it's interesting. I'll admit it was tough to get through for me, so I do want to hear your take. All right, perfect. Yes, hopefully Tammy will be the halftime show. I highly doubt it, but maybe. I'll see if I'll give her a call. He had opium for a writer whose name I wrote down and then forgot. But basically, this writer was one of the group of writers that Hemingway called marked for death. These are the group of writers called the marked for death writers. These were writers that had gone out to Paris. They were expats. They were all American writers, or most of them were American writers. They went out to Paris basically to die. They were there to just sate themselves and to overindulge themselves until eventually they died. There's a point where the publisher of the Quarter Hemingway calls him a con. Calls him, you conned me, you conning con man, or whatever he says. You took your con and did something. There's a whole uh, uh, movement there where he was talking about conning people. Um, uh, Sorry, where was I going with that? My goodness. Uh, Oh, yeah. How so the con in that instance could be confidence or it could be consumption. How close Hemingway got to people that were constantly trying to bring him down. How they made it look like uh, being marked for death was the only true way to be a writer. Hemingway is annoyed when the writers don't see him as marked for death at the young age of 25, and Hemingway says, "Listen, soon, I will absolutely soon be marked for death." And it's interesting to remember that Hemingway wrote this book much later. So Hemingway, from his notes, maybe took down that conversation and most likely added that little part in. This is sort of future Hemingway talking about his overconsumption. He will eventually kill himself sitting at a typewriter, the same way that um, Gonzo, who's the Gonzo writer, that guy. Why not? I got like 5 of his books. He would eventually kill himself the same way he wanted to die, like Hemingway. That's gonna drive me crazy. I don't remember his name. Yeah, Bon Bon. He did. He killed himself. Shot himself in the face. I don't know if you're allowed to say that in on YouTube, but it is a book club after all, and it is exactly what happened. He did. He killed himself sitting at his typewriter after having a huge steak. That's famously his last thing. Anyway, so the hunger that we get into, where it almost becomes that we are unable to ever be full. Every time something good happens, we need more of it. Every time something good goes on, it isn't good enough. We need to keep moving on, which is what is going to bring me into my favorite part of the book, which Hunter S. Thompson. Thank you. Hunter S. Thompson. Hunter S. Thompson also killed himself sitting at a typewriter after, and this is kind of fun, after he had typed word for word one of Hemingway's novels. He wanted to see what it was like to write a masterpiece, so he just copied one of Hemingway's novels. I thought that was kind of a thing. Yes, I described drug addiction. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with drug addiction. There's a lot of drug addiction. Ezra Pound, who was not suffering from any kind of drug addiction that we know, that we write about, kept a jar of opium for his writer friend in one of the only real comic scenes in the novel. Hemingway gets a call at a late hour and rushes to this writer's side. He's locked himself on the roof, and they're like, "Okay, this is the time." Ezra told me the moment that this guy needs it, I have all this opium for him. So he goes and he tries to give the man the opium. And funny enough, the writer does not want it. He takes it and he chucks it at Hemingway and then proceeds to throw milk bottles at Hemingway. And Hemingway describes the man as kind of slight, doesn't look like a real athlete, and is able to just nail him in the back. I feel like that's the real drug addiction that we're dealing with there is somebody trying to come out of this malaise of always being hungry. Um, uh, Contrasted directly by F. Scott Fitzgerald. There are themes in this book, certainly of misogyny. There are themes in this book, certainly um, of abuse and so maybe even torture. Listen, all kinds of stuff, psychological torture and whatnot. But all of those are exemplified within the character of Zelda Fitzgerald. Now, I have no idea. Hemingway meets her 3 or 4 times through the book at different eras. I have no idea what their actual relationship was. I don't know if Hemingway was really, really angry with Zelda By the end of this whole thing, I don't know if he was really angry with Zelda because now he has the benefit of hindsight to see how great a writer F. Scott Fitzgerald was and how jealous Hemingway sees Zelda Fitzgerald, how he describes her as a hawk. There's a whole chapter called Hawks Won't Share, how he sees this woman basically overtaking F. Scott Fitzgerald's life. Um, she is elated when he is too drunk to write. She is horribly jealous when he does end up writing. Now, again, these are real people. In life, there are no just villains. Nobody is just a villain. Everybody, an acting exercise that says. Even Hitler thought he was an okay guy. Nobody is out just doing evil things. Sometimes we don't know why we're doing evil things, but they are mixed up in there. The theme of Zelda is Zelda wanted Scott to fail. She didn't want to be second fiddle. She was clearly was a very strong woman, was a woman that in the 1920s certainly couldn't survive on her own. That just wasn't nothing to do with her, just sort of where women were at that point. And so, yeah, you needed to be in a relationship for the most part in order to live at least a simpler life. We met Gertrude. We'll get into Gertrude Stein here in a little bit, but she was basically living on her own. She lived with her roommate. But I just thought it was fascinating to see how much Hemingway despised Zelda and what she sort of hungered for in this whole thing was to have F. Scott Fitzgerald hunger too much. Every time F. Scott Fitzgerald quit drinking, she would take him right out to a party. Every time he was way too drunk to exist, she was having a great time. Sometimes we can pass that hunger. Sometimes we can pass that emptiness on to other people. And I think that Zelda Fitzgerald was kind of an interesting look into that. Again, it's with an unreliable narrator like Hemingway is in this, even though it's his story, it is tough to tell what Zelda was like. Zelda didn't write books on her own. Zelda was a lot of people's muse. And I'm going to tell you, you don't become Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, you don't become their muse by being a boring, horrible person. I'm sorry, you just don't. Nobody was looking at Zelda being like, this bitch, get her out. What is this? I'm going to write, I hate her so much. I'm going to write books about her. I'm going to write whole novels. I'm going to dedicate a life to writing a character, to finding a character such as this, because I hate her so much, because she's so dull and uninteresting and mean-spirited. There had to have been other things about Zelda, because Zelda became a very, very, she was a ubiquitous for at least a while. I mean, she was the poster child for the Roaring Twenties. Nobody did the Roaring Twenties like Zelda did the Roaring Twenties. She was truly the original flapper, and she wore that incredibly well. So I'm so interested in the thought of an old man writing himself as a young man and talking about how his hunger got to him. We know that Ernest Hemingway was incredibly unhappy at the end of his life. I guess we don't know that. We can really assume it though. So it's interesting to even think as this book as a movable feast, as something that at any point, if Hemingway was somewhat lost in the sauce of his own life. Hey, he had written all this stuff down. Look how great I was. Look how when we look back on anything, I remember working in bars in Hollywood, and if I really think about it, I was annoyed a lot of the time. I was annoyed by the customers. I was annoyed by cleaning. I was annoyed by the hours. However, if I don't really think about it and I just look back on it, I love those times. Those were my best times. And when I wonder about what it is to, start a bar on the internet, and continue down this path of making drinks and building communities, I can always find myself thinking about those times and reminiscing well. Um, Nostalgia is a very important part of human survival. It sort of keeps us grounded. It keeps us um, from wandering too far from the village or from forgetting our village altogether. I know people that have been to prison, and they will tell me, honestly, looking back on it, I liked it. I thought it was great. I made friends. Not everybody in there. In fact, most people in there aren't horrible people all the time. Yeah, they did horrible things, but that doesn't mean that everybody's always bad. So I think the nostalgia part of this movable feast is a very interesting bit to it. One last thing that I want to talk about, and then I want to talk about what you guys want to talk about, is Gertrude. Gertrude Stein. Um, uh, this was the biggest turn. I think we could all see where F. Scott Fitzgerald was going. I think from the first time that we met him at the bar and he took a drink and went pale faced, I think we could all see what was going on with F. Scott Fitzgerald. I was kind of shocked by what happened with Gertrude Stein. Um, at the very beginning of the book, we see the reverence that Hemingway has for her. There is some slight misogyny that he throws in there. Tough to, it's tough for a male writer to be friends with a powerful female writer. That's Hemingway just kind of being a fragile guy. But he really did think of Gertrude Stein very, very fondly at the beginning. She taught him a lot of lessons, and he was able to he was at her parties. Even Gertrude Stein, which is crazy enough, though, did have a level of misogyny. She would speak with the writers that would come in, or the artists, the Picassos and the all those guys that would come in, the Joyces and whatnot. And then she would have her roommate. I think we all know what that means at this point. She would have her roommate talk to the wives. So the all the wives would not be allowed to talk to Miss Stein. Miss Stein was clearly more interested in speaking with the men, and she left the wife to sort of entertain the women. And I think that's a really interesting sort of internalized misogyny that Gertrude had. I mean, for whatever reason. But the interesting part of it is how Hemingway and Gertrude split. It's not really described all that much in the book. Hemingway was leaving Paris. Gertrude told him to stop by after she had told him many times that you're allowed to just stop by my house at any point that you want. The housekeeper will let you in. You do you, boo. Come on up and hang out. He showed up to say goodbye, and he heard Gertrude having an argument in another room. Not even so much an argument. The way he describes it is she was pleading with somebody. She was pleading with somebody. He couldn't hear who the other person was. Now, of course, we are. I think it's important that we know that we at least take a stab at what it was. Whilst Gertrude put forward the big controlling face, we know that oftentimes relationships are not what they seem. This one, in many ways, this is not just her roommate. We know that this is her partner, um, but also that even though Gertrude seemed like she was sort of the ruler of the house, Hemingway is completely turned off the first time he ever hears her begging for anything. Clearly, she was begging her roommate, please, or her partner, please don't leave, don't go, don't go. Hemingway so turned off by this that he just pieces out. He just absolutely left, and we can see a change in the way that he wrote her on those last little bits. It was a kind of a self-aware thing that Hemingway did to write her as a very strong person for the first bits of it, and then sort of switch it up and never ever see her again after that one instance. We only see one instance of her not being as strong as possible, and then Hemingway reminds us that men writers cannot be friendly with female with a strong female writers. You just can't. You just can't. One outburst like that. I thought that was a bonbon. I agree. I think I thought that was one of the more emotional passages in the entire thing, even though they didn't really give us an idea of what was going. Hemingway didn't really give us an idea of what was going on, but that is sort of what it do. One outburst like that, the women that were at that time, you didn't get two, you got the one, and then people were done with you. Maybe it's not just Paris. Maybe wherever you are as a young man, woman stays with you for the rest of their life. Yeah, Roger, I think this is a really good. I think this is a really good point because I don't think it's just Paris. I think that Hemingway idolizes Paris the way I idolize. I lived when I was 22 ish. I lived in Naples, Italy. I lived in Granada, Spain. And obviously, those are not Paris. Those are, of course, Europe. But in my mind, literally nothing went wrong while I was there. Everything is beautiful. There's no, I didn't have my heart broken. I was never poor. I never skipped meals, all that. But again, if I really sit down and think about it, I don't think I ate for weeks on end at points. I remember I had to sleep on a park bench at one point because I didn't have enough money for a hostel that night. I was playing the ukulele on the street to make money. Certainly not a glamorous time, but something that it did teach me. And I think that's sort of what Hemingway is talking about in this is how to sate that hunger on your own, and also learning that no matter whether you do great or whether you do poorly, if you don't understand how to make the hunger go away by itself, no external force is going to do it. There's just no way. Hemingway clearly did not understand that. Did not figure it out in time. He drank himself to death. I make a joke all the time saying the best thing I ever learned was my limit, and sometimes I whistle at it as it goes right behind me because it is a difficult thing to know. But I do think it's important, even in a with things like this, with the the ability to look back on a time when we remember that everything was so great. I don't know. I think Hemingway. I think this book meant a lot to Hemingway. Not necessarily because it's a book. I mean, he never saw a dime from it. But because it sort of encapsulated that particular time that I do think a lot of us have. So I think he writes it with um, a lot of frosty memories, a lot of really beautiful, sparkling times. The wine was always good. The rain didn't bother him that much. The people, when they were bad to him, they were just bad people, and he always sort of found a way to make himself justified in that. So, one more thing I want to talk about, and then yeah, if you guys have anything else, yeah, weakness must have made him reflect on his own life. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that Hemingway, for being the toreador and the matador that he was, and the hunter and the war reporter that he was, I think that weakness was one of those things that he could never really grasp. I don't think he really ever understood weakness, and the fact that he wrote sort of an unreliable narrator that always just makes it. I think we know people like this in our life, right? We know people that no matter what their story is, they're always right. I have a friend started every story that he had with me. He would always start, there I was, dancing, having a good time. And you're like, this guy sounds like he's always happy. But when you got into how dark some of his stories were, you realize that he was unable to see flaws in himself. I think this is Hemingway unable to put up a mirror and really see any flaws. I don't think that this. I think that when he's writing Robert Jordan in For Whom the Bell Tolls and all the other ones, all the other narrators that he have, the old man and whatnot. I think that those guys are able to sort of look within themselves and find it. I did not find a lot of self-reflection in this book. He was an I narrator. He was the first person narrator, and you never didn't find it. It didn't stand out all that well. It was profound. It is an idealized. It definitely jumps us right into what we felt like when we were 20 and living our lives without a care. But it's certainly, oof. It did not. It did. I did not find. I did not find this to be a super reflexive book. But when you're 20, you aren't reflexive. You're not supposed to be reflexive when you're 20. You're supposed to be out there conquering the world. If you, at 20, every time sat down and wondered where you were in the world, if you got ennui at every moment when you were 20, you're not going to get that far. So it is interesting that an older man was able to look back on himself, and maybe he wrote it with that in mind. Or maybe he was unable to really find himself in the find out what he was all about. Find out, look inward and see what he had done wrong. Last thing I want to talk about is the concept of selling out. We talked about that a little bit. We talked about that a little bit in the hunger bit of this, but he does mention a lot about selling out. He gets into a number of fights with, I believe the guy's name was Dunning. I should have really just, I wrote all these things, but then I didn't like give myself notes on what to do. I think there's a guy named Dunning, pretty sure. Anyway, this was one of the marked for death writers. The guys that were going to live this life. They were going to go down with the ship. They were writers, right? Yeah, Ralph Dunning. There we go. Ralph Dunning gets into an argument with Ralph Dunning about whether or not it is important to sell your work. And of course, Hemingway at this point in time is saying it is important to sell your work. And these marked for death writers said it isn't. That's not what we're doing this for. We don't plan to be here long. We are going to drink ourselves to death, and in that time, we are going to be our truest selves. We are not going to let anybody stand in our way. Anybody give us probably even notes. We're just going to write and we're going to publish. They talk about the mystery of people that publish so rarely. Um, he's the opium tosser. I got the wrong guy then. Remove Ralph Dunning. It was another guy. Uh, yeah, these guys, and honestly, I think we can all look at these guys, these marked for death writers, and we can see that there is absolutely some, there is absolutely some, uh, there's something noble about that. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm just gonna write. I'm going to Nicolas Cage this in Leaving Las Vegas. I'm just gonna go down with the ship. I'm gonna write, and then whatever happens to my stuff is what happens to my stuff. I don't care about the rest of you. There is something nice about that. You realize quickly though that being a marked for death a writer is sad. It is sad. That's a kind of a sad existence. Yeah, you're to quote Lady Gaga, ain't it hard keeping it so hardcore? Sometimes we can get so caught up in our convictions that we no longer see what's important to us. I believe that is what was going on with these guys. However, there is an opposite case in this, and that is our good friend Scott Fitzgerald. Scott Fitzgerald talks to Hemingway often about um, changing everything in order to get the critics to like his books. He takes notes. He accepts editor's notes. He will change whatever. And Hemingway sees this as also bad. It's kind of fun, but yeah, yeah. So interesting. Later, he got mad at Fitzgerald that he wasn't pure to his writing. That's exactly right, Roger. That's the thing. Is F. Scott Fitzgerald wasn't a pure writer. F. Scott Fitzgerald lived a lifestyle. He had a wife. He had had a very demanding wife. He had a very demanding life. He had parties to get to. He had a reputation to uphold. He was a very talented writer that did not care that much about being a talented writer. He saw that as a means to an end. Hemingway sees this as a sellout. This is somebody that it's so sad to see somebody do that. It just two sides of the same coin, really. These people that, whether you are talented, I'll give you an example of my life. I have an actor friend of mine, not really a friend, in fact, probably a mortal enemy. I'm not going to give you his name because, oh God, imagine this got out. But he is, and I will say this with all honesty, one of the least talented human beings I've ever met. A person that, in my mind, and I'm going to try and be as diplomatic as possible. Somebody that does not exude a drop of natural talent. Does not have was not given the ability to be clever. Was not given the ability to read a room. Was not and to be honest, maybe you aren't given those. Maybe you are sort of taught those. Never learned those. Never learned any of those things. One of the most successful people that I know on earth. This is a person that followed his dreams and got it done. And for a long, long time, that drove me crazy. I was irrationally angry at this person because I had, I got up on a lot of stages. I learned how to read rooms. I learned how to turn a phrase. I learned how to structure things. I learned how to, I learned how to be funny. Whether I'm succeeding at that at any point in my life now, who knows? But this person never did any of that. But this person was an incredible business person. This person was so good at marketing himself. He's so good at putting himself in the path of success. He did it shamelessly. I don't have that. That is not a skill that I have. I will not sell myself. to people. I'm not interested in any of that. But I then have to wonder whether or not I am marking myself for death because I am unwilling to let go of whatever pride it is to put myself out there. It took me a long time. I'm not going to lie. It took me a very, very long time to become okay with seeing this person on my TV all the time. All that I'm telling you, every time I turn on my TV, it feels like there he is. Um, but it is a matter of learning how to find the balance between being marked for death, between saying I will, no matter what, stay true to my art and do everything that I can to, if you don't understand it, screw you. I don't write in proper sentence structure because that's how my heart feels. I tell horribly offensive jokes because that's how my heart feels, and those are all. That's a fine way to live if that's the moral that you want to live on, and I do think that some people do it very well. I have some of my most talented, treasured friends on earth are have been broke their entire lives, sleep on couches, even in their 40s, and will not compromise for anybody. Every time I see them, they make me laugh harder than anybody I've ever met in my life. Marked for death. Marked for death. On the other hand, this other person lives in a very nice house, does has his whole thing going, and he has never ever once made me laugh, ever. Just I don't. He doesn't. He is not inspiring to me. I think that this is where we are at with these two sides of the coin. Can we love ourselves enough to share or sell? Yeah, there you go, Bonbon. Can we love ourselves enough to share or sell ourselves and be successful? That is, I think that's a one thing that Hemingway is sort of struggling with here, having the Mark for Death writers and F. Scott Fitzgerald come in. That's tough. It is a tough thing to. It's a tough thing to get into. Can you sell out? What's your level of selling out? Does it change through your life? As a kid, you don't know what life is going to bring. So you can have your morals. You can stand on your soapboxes and point out the sellouts and tell them you're going to a corporate suit job and you're giving up to the man. You don't follow a passion. Some people's passion is living well. Fine way to do it. F. Scott Fitzgerald's passion, living well. He loved his wife. She was horrible to him, but he loved her. He loved his big houses. He loved being the Gatsby guy. He loved being that. Like, he loved his celebrity. We don't always have to get, not everything has to give you all of the pleasure. Not everything has to give you all of the fulfillment. Sometimes, even when you get those good things, you need more. And so finding a way to duck into yourself and find those, I think, is important. Is it pride, or do you see yourself selling yourself as a narcissist? Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I don't know. Is it pride, or do you see selling yourself as a narcissist? Yeah, I don't know what it is. To whether it's enough, he kills them all off in an avalanche, which is kind of an interesting way to do that. But I think Hemingway picked his side at that point. Hemingway was not going to be changing whatever he could for anybody. But he also saw it as important to get your name out and sell yourself a little bit. Yes, there's a little bit. Integrity is critical, but sadly, few landlords accept it as currency. I think that is the challenge of the human integrity. Yeah. I tried a couple times to when I was out there selling scripts. I tried to give my landlord a script one time for rent. Turns out she did not want it. She really did not want that. She wanted the money. Uh, so yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. Yeah, integrity. Um, integrity means different things to different people. I think that F. Scott Fitzgerald saw integrity as staying with Zelda. Giving her the life that she wanted. I think that we can see him as abused, and he most certainly, the way he's written, was certainly abused. We can see him as downtrodden, absolutely. But sometimes it is important to sometimes it's important to find out what integrity means to you. Is it integrity in your art, or is it integrity in your life or in your relationships or whatnot? We know that Ernest Hemingway was certainly not did not have a lot of integrity in his relationships. He was married 4 times, I believe, and that back then, now that's you hear about that enough on Vanderpump Rules, but back then it was a kind of a big deal. So clearly, whatever Hemingway thought was the most courageous thing to do. It didn't often deal with his family, so it's tough to separate the art from the author. Almost always, especially if you are reading their firsthand journey in their 20s. But I think for this book, there are enough kind of cool themes in here to be able to do that. Okay, I am going to go through the comments here again. I have no. Yeah, Bon. It's okay to have emptiness. That's exactly right. It's certainly okay to have emptiness. It's okay to not be overly full. We saw what happened when people got overly full, when people were, Hemingway talked in the book about enjoying art more when he was hungry. Having, when you're a hungry young writer, a hungry young painter, you're going to paint like your life depends on it. Because at that point, it kind of does. Yeah, Hemingway did not seem to like people complimenting him. He certainly did not. That's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to learn, to let people compliment you. It's not easy. It seems like it would be the easiest thing in the world. Wouldn't you rather have somebody telling you how great you are versus how awful you are? I don't know what that is, but Hemingway and I both share that. We don't like, we put ourselves out here. I put myself out on the internet for the internet to tell me. And to be very fair, the internet is often very nice at telling me how awful I am. So if you don't believe me, just go watch anytime I light something on fire at Mixed Cocktail Hour. They're not huge fans of me over there, but I don't know how I became the villain of that story over there. Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing to learn to take a compliment. But I think Hemingway didn't often think of other people, and sometimes you think that getting a compliment is them trying to tell you how great you are. But a lot of times, a compliment is somebody telling you that they get it. However great they think you are, they understand what you're up to. They understand what your thing is. So more often than not, a compliment is given. There are some altruistic compliments, but more often a compliment is given in order to tell somebody or to make the complimenter feel good. Hey, I see what you're doing there. I understand what you're doing there. I am with you. On some level, I see myself in you. There's a lot of that in compliments, and I don't think that Hemingway was great at finding those out. So Hemingway was deeply flawed. Hemingway was certainly deeply flawed, but he was able to write a pretty darn good drink. Yeah, it was interesting to find to read about poor young Hemingway. Yeah, okay. Anything that you guys found particularly interesting? Your enemy be damned. We are all don't damn him. It doesn't listen. Oh god. If you guys ever found out who that was. We're all excited that you put yourself out there every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Thank you. Yes, remember this class will always remain free. Yeah, I don't want to say he's my enemy. That gives him way too much power. For a while, I don't think about him anymore. But for a while, kind of all I thought about. One of those super motivating things. I was like, oh, is this guy famous? Why is this guy famous? Drove me crazy. He is a verb in my house. You got blanked in this thing. Oh, this guy's blanking over there. His name's not blank. Okay. I think that sort of covers it. The book. If you guys don't have anything else you would like to talk about, did you guys enjoy the book? I know it seems like some of you had sort of found it a slog. I get it. There were no. I'm a sci-fi guy myself. I like science fiction. That is my favorite genre. If you guys want to do the next book, sci-fi or something with a little bit more action, I think that is probably a great way to go. I know that my wife is reading a book right now that I was thinking about doing, Annihilation. Book about a big dome forming on Earth and all the animals changing. There's a whole movie about it. I know this is kind of a slog, though. I know that this is kind of one of those like esoteric. If you guys haven't been reading a lot, and I don't blame you, I have not been reading a lot. I know that this thing can come kind of slow. It doesn't. I mean, it's short, but it can be kind of slow unless you're really looking for something in it. And for a lot of us, I think reading is more about sitting down and hallucinating something that we've never seen before. Me personally, I did very much enjoy it. I did find some chapters certainly better than others. I think Bon Bon said it right here. The 8th chapter, the Hungry chapter, I think is one of the best chapters. The Hunger was a discipline. I think is one of the better chapters in the book and one of the better Hemingway chapters, I think, at all. I do think that personally, is this my favorite Hemingway novel? It is not my favorite Hemingway novel. I think that still is For Whom the Bell Tolls. Something about For Whom the Bell Tolls really sticks with me. But as far as let me just say it, as far as another Catcher in the Rye, I think that this may be a better version of Catcher in the Rye. It feels those same things. It feels a lot of those same genre points, the selling out, all that stuff. But it does it from a first-person point of view. If any of you have ever read For Whom the Bell Tolls, and then immediately afterward read George Orwell's Homage to Catalonia, you'll know the power of telling a story from the author's first person and how that absolutely can bring another level to it. I think that because this was actually Hemingway actually having existential crises in a place that we all know about, Paris, even if you've never been, we all know about it. I think that this was a good book. I think if we're going to do stars, I'd probably give it a 3.5, maybe 4 stars out of 5. Not Hemingway's best, but certainly a worthwhile read. Should take you about 2.5 hours, and just with it, think about the themes of selling out and hunger and all that stuff. Yeah, 4 stars, works for Bon Bon. There were some sections that took powering through, but overall I found it very interesting. Glad we read it. Yeah, I don't think that I don't think you pick this book up. I don't think that you're ever like, oh, I'm going to the beach. Hope there's a sex scene in it. I just found out I don't read a lot of those. I don't know, what do you call it? Like those beach reads. I don't. In fact, I don't think I've ever read one. But a friend of mine just directed a new movie coming out on Netflix called The People You Meet on Vacation. Um, and apparently, I don't know anything about it, but apparently, right in the middle of that one, he was describing to us an incredibly graphic sex scene. And I said, why would you put that in there? He goes, no, that's in the book. And let me tell you, if you ever read a book on a beach, that scene is in every book. So I did not realize that a lot of these beach reads just had one big fat sex scene in there. So I'm gonna start. Yeah, trash novels. That's exactly what we have. I have to say 3. The unreliable narrator hit me early on, and I couldn't shake it. Yeah, honestly, Michael, I cannot fault you for that. The unreliable narrator is tough. They're just, that's a very strong decision, and you really do have to address it. And Hemingway does not address it in this. Hemingway, we do not ever find Hemingway looking inward, so it's tough. Whereas, if you have a third person narrator, even if we can, a third person omniscient narrator where we can sort of read the main character's stuff, we're removed from it a little bit. So we know that they're a person and not just telling us a story. Nobody wants to be lied to, and when you have an unreliable narrator, you can certainly feel a little lied to. Knowing that this came out posthumously as well and went through at least 2 different hands. Mary, his 4th wife, who may or may not have cut part of Hadley's, his wife's stuff out. We don't know. His wife was not well represented in this book. Not that she was a good person, but she just wasn't in there a lot. Begs the question, was Mary jealous? Did Mary sort of want this out? It's tough to tell. It's tough to tell. So it says Moderns, City of Angels, and Midnight in Paris were all based on this book. That is correct. The Woody Allen movie Midnight in Paris sends Owen Wilson back into Paris, and he meets with a lot of these people. I do think that we could see what we can do about getting a movie night going here. I don't know what that will entail, but I do think that would be cool. And a TV series is in development. Look at me. I'm selling books. Yeah, his first wife is a saint. His first wife was certainly written as a saint in this. She gave birth while they were living in Paris. We don't really talk about it, little Mr. Bumby. His first wife seemed to be on the right track. She just wasn't written about all that much. Kind of interesting. There we go. Okay. I think, is the enemy you speak of Kyle? Yes. That son of a bitch. That very famous Kyle with no talent. No. Of course it's not Kyle. Of course it's not Kyle. Kyle is the greatest. Kyle doesn't read books, so he's not going to be joining us on book club. So whatever you guys have to say about Kyle, you can say it to me, and I'll relay it to him. I don't know. I liked it. I like doing book club. If you guys are interested in doing another book club, we'll probably take a week and find another one. I might give you guys a little bit more time to read it. I don't know if it was time. I don't know if all of you guys, like I did, will wait until the last minute. I told you it'd only take you about 2.5 hours to read the book. I don't know if you guys waited until 3 hours before the class and started going. That is certainly the Cush special. That is what I do. So I don't know if more time would be helpful, or if just finding a book that is a little bit more modern might be the way to go. So we'll keep looking. But if you guys are interested in the book club, we will keep doing the book club. This is Ernest Hemingway's A Moveable Feast. We'll do a mixed reaction at 3.5 to 4, or 3 to 4 stars for that. And that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you guys are already in your pajamas. Is it Jim? He is hard for me to laugh at or enjoy in movies. Which one is Jim? Jim from The Office? It's not Jim from The Office. Thanks, Dr. Cush, and everybody for the book club. It was interesting and fun. Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, as long as it was interesting and fun, then we are good. That's what I got for you guys. Thank you so much for showing up to Dr. Cush's Exotic Drinks. I am Dr. Thank you, everybody, for joining Dr. Cush's Exotic Book Club. I am Dr. Cush. We will find a way to... Let me just see if I'm still echoing. Oh, I am certainly still echoing. No idea what that is. Really annoying. I will find you guys. I'll find a way to get you guys on here next time so we can have a real chat about it. But I think for the first one, we read an interesting book, made an interesting cocktail called A Moveable Feast. Thank you so much for showing up to Dr. Cush's Drinks. Oh, we'll be here tomorrow for Tiki Tuesday. So hang out with us tomorrow, Tiki Tuesday. Watch these. These are the patrons that keep the show financially alive. And you guys that showed up are the ones that keep it spiritually alive. So thank you. Do not become a marked for dead writer at any point this week. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much. Till next time. Bye-bye. Sorry. I do want to acknowledge real quick that we do have a new level of patron. Thank you very much. I don't know if they've even watched it to this point or if they ever will watch this, but thank you to Keith and Avery. My goodness, they are allowed behind the bar. So I want to just get my little thing so I can point at them. Okay, guys, till next time. Bye.